Picture this: being struck by gunfire 9 times in a firing squad yet emerging unscathed, or plummeting 33,000 feet from a bursting aircraft without any parachute and surviving the ordeal. Or consider being the target of over 600 assassination attempts yet passing away due to natural causes. These tales aren't scripts from films. These are the documented, astonishingly true chronicles of history's most incredibly fortunate individuals. This isn't merely about expertise or bravery. It's about those who became living, breathing anomalies of statistics. One such individual, Peter Freyен, was not merely a Danish explorer. He was a towering figure at 6 feet and 7 inches, treating the Arctic as if it were his own backyard. However, one day his playground attempted to entomb him. Caught in a fierce blizzard, he excavated a hole for refuge, only to find himself trapped beneath a sudden avalanche of snow and ice that solidified like concrete. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and comment to share insights on when you began watching. With his tools out of reach, Peter faced the prospect of a frozen grave, so he executed what any ingenious, desperate individual would. He defecated, molded it into a long, sharp chisel, and awaited for it to freeze solid in the frigid Arctic climate. Armed with his improvised excrement dagger, he skillfully chiseled his way out. As a further challenge, he was later forced to amputate his own gangrenous toes using a pair of pliers, all without any anesthetic. Seriously, this man's life read like a survival film played on a terrifyingly difficult level. 2. In 1945, a B-25 bomber lost in dense fog crashed directly into the 78th and 79th floors of the Empire State Building. Elevator operator Betty Lou Oliver was situated on the 80th floor when she was hurled from her car by the explosion, sustaining severe burns. Rescue personnel placed her into a nearby elevator to transport her to safety. That's when her misfortune transitioned from dreadful to disastrous and then swung right back around to miraculous. The elevator cables damaged from the crash snapped. Betty Lou Oliver plummeted 75 stories straight down. But here's the twist. The 1,000 feet of severed cable had fallen to the base of the shaft, first coiling into a dense, springy cushion. The falling elevator landed upon this makeshift metal trampoline, and she survived. She holds the Guinness World Record for the longest survival from an elevator fall. Now that's what you call a soft landing. 3. If you ever find yourself in the company of Fra Salak, the Croatian music educator, you might want to maintain a safe distance. This man was the embodiment of a walking, talking horror film. In 1962, his train plunged into a frigid river, and he emerged unscathed. A year later, he was forcefully expelled from a malfunctioning aircraft door and landed in a haystack while 19 others tragically perished. Then his bus skidded into a river. His car caught fire not once but twice. He was struck by a bus. Ultimately, when his car careened off a cliff, he was ejected and managed to grasp onto a tree as his vehicle exploded 300 feet below. After narrowly escaping death 7 times, the cosmos evidently decided to compensate him. At 73, he purchased a lottery ticket for the very first time in 4 decades and won nearly $1 million. It appears he had exhausted all his bad luck. 4. Timothy Dexter was a remarkably unwise American entrepreneur from the 18th century who, by all accounts, should have faced financial ruin. His affluent, educated competitors consistently provided him with dreadful investment advice, hoping to lead to his downfall. They suggested he should sell warming pans used for heating beds in frigid New England to the tropical West Indies. A foolish idea, right? Yet he went ahead with it. The locals discovered they were ideal for scooping molasses, and he earned a substantial profit. Then they mockingly advised him to transport coal to Newcastle, the English city that was the world's foremost coal producer. It was the epitome of a futile endeavor. Dexter proceeded with it, and his vessel arrived right amidst a significant miners' strike, allowing him to sell his coal at an astonishing price. He somehow succeeded so dramatically that he broke the economic mold. 5. Maggie Dixon's story illustrates that sometimes a poorly executed task can result in a life saved. In 1724 in Edinburgh, Maggie was convicted of a crime and sentenced to hang. The execution transpired as planned. She was strung up, suspended for the required duration, and officially declared dead. Her body was placed in a wooden coffin and loaded onto a cart for burial. However, en route to the graveyard, the individuals transporting her heard a chilling banging sound emanating from inside the coffin. They opened it, discovering Maggie was very much alive and likely quite baffled. Under Scottish law at that period, her sentence mandated hanging until dead. As the sentence had technically been completed, she could not be executed a second time for the same offense. Thus, she was legally free to depart and continued to live for another 40 years, forever known as Half-Hanged Maggie. 6. Violet Jessop may just be the most fortunate or unfortunate individual to have ever worked at sea. She served as a stewardess on ocean liners and had a peculiar tendency to be aboard ships during their most disastrous moments. Initially, she was working on the RMS Olympic when it collided with a British warship in 1911. The vessel suffered significant damage but managed to make a slow return to port. A year later, she took up a position on its brand new sister ship, the supposedly unsinkable RMS Titanic. We all remember the tragic fate of that voyage. Violet was placed in a lifeboat and survived the monumental disaster. You might think she'd want a different career path, but that wasn't the case. During the First World War, she worked as a nurse on the third sister ship, the HMHS Britannic. In 1916, it struck a German mine and sank in under an hour. And yes, Violet made it through that as well. If you ever invent a time machine and notice her booking a cruise, consider taking the train instead. 7. The chances of experiencing a lightning strike in your lifetime are approximately 1 in 300. Therefore, allow me to introduce Roy Sullivan, a U.S. park ranger who seemingly took on the God of Thunder as a personal adversary. Roy was hit by lightning not once, not twice, but an officially documented 7 times between 1942 and 1977. He was struck while in a lookout tower, while driving his vehicle, while standing in his front yard, and even while he was fishing. The strikes ignited his hair, blew his shoe off, and left him with various burns. Eventually, he began to think that a supernatural force was intentionally attempting to destroy him. And who could blame him? For a time, he even carried a can of water with him wherever he went just in case. They didn't dub him the human lightning rod for nothing. 8. Among the billions of individuals who have ever existed, only one person is officially recognized as having been directly struck by a meteorite. Her name was Anne Hodges. In November 1954, she was napping on her couch in Sylacauga, Alabama, when an 8 and 12-pound chunk of outer space rock crashed through her ceiling. It smashed into her large console radio, ricocheted off of it, and impacted her hip. The impact resulted in a significant pineapple-shaped bruise, but she came away relatively unharmed. Consider the cosmic odds. A fragment of an asteroid that had been traveling for millions of years through the vastness of space ended its journey by giving a woman a painful bruise while she slept. It stands as perhaps the most focused, yet ultimately harmless celestial event in human history. 9. Picture falling from a plane at 33,000 feet. Now picture doing so without a parachute. That was the harsh reality for Vesna Vulovic, a 22-year-old Serbian flight attendant in 1972. A suspected bomb in a briefcase tore her plane apart mid-air as she fell towards the earth, trapped within a section of the fuselage. Miraculously, this metal coffin landed at just the right angle on a heavily snow-covered mountainside in Czechoslovakia, cushioning the force of the impact just enough. A villager who had been a medic in World War II found her and knew how to keep her alive until help could arrive. She awoke from a coma with no recollection of the fall, and her first words were reportedly a request for a cigarette. She survived the highest recorded fall without a parachute, demonstrating that sometimes the universe has an extraordinarily strange and violent approach to making individuals famous. 10. Surviving one atomic bomb is a statistical miracle. Surviving 2 is a cosmic joke with a grim punchline. And Tsutomu Yamaguchi was the one who experienced it. In August 1945, this 29-year-old engineer was in Hiroshima on a business trip when the little boy bomb detonated less than 2 miles away. The explosion burst his eardrums and caused serious burns, but he remained alive. So, what do you do after enduring a nuclear apocalypse? You go home. The next day, badly injured, he took a train back to his hometown of Nagasaki. The following day, while explaining the mushroom cloud to his skeptical boss, the second atomic bomb, Fat Man, exploded. Once more, he found himself in the blast zone. And yet again, he survived. He lived to be 93, a living symbol of both humanity's capacity for destruction and one man's absurd resilience against death. 11. Some individuals collect stamps. Dutch professional cyclist Martin de Jong appears to collect near-death experiences aboard Malaysia Airlines. In March 2014, he was set to fly on flight MH370, the infamous flight that vanished without a trace. At the very last moment, he discovered a cheaper flight that didn't involve a lengthy layover and made the switch. Several months later, in the month of July, he was scheduled to fly on flight MH17, just before making his way to the airport. He opted to save a few €100 and exchanged his ticket for a different flight that departed a few days later. Flight MH17 was tragically shot down over Ukraine, claiming the lives of all on board. Twice in a span of 5 months, this individual's frugality ensured his survival. He narrowly escaped two of the most notorious air disasters of the 21st century simply by being a smart shopper. I bet he will never choose another airline again. 12. For 3 days, Harrison Oken found himself ensnared in a terrifying ordeal. He served as the cook on a Nigerian tugboat when it capsized and sank to 100 feet below the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. As his 11 crewmates drowned, Oken was swept into a restroom that miraculously formed a 4-foot air pocket. In complete darkness, freezing temperatures, and with only a can of soda, he perched on an overturned box, listening to the sounds of unknown sea creatures consuming the remains of his friends. When a rescue dive team finally arrived, they were grimly on a mission to recover bodies. Picture their utter astonishment when, as they were examining the wreckage, a hand suddenly emerged from the darkness and seized them. Oken had managed to survive for almost 72 hours in this underwater tomb. His rescue was a miraculous occurrence, a true one-in-a-million event. 13. In May 1902, getting arrested turned out to be the best fortune for Ludger Silberis. He was confined to a solitary cell in the town of Sierre, on the island of Martinique, after getting into a drunken fight. Mere days later, the nearby Mount Pi volcano erupted in one of the most powerful explosions of the 20th century. A superheated pyroclastic flow sped along at hundreds of miles per hour, instantly incinerating the city and taking the lives of all 30,000 residents. All except for one. Ludger's cell was a poorly ventilated bomb-proof stone enclosure located partially underground, which protected him from the lethal heat and gases. 4 days later, he was discovered badly burnt but alive. He received a pardon for his offenses and later toured with Barnum and Bailey Circus as the man who survived Doomsday. 14. The Halifax explosion of 1917 represented the largest man-made blast prior to the atomic age, resulting in a catastrophic event that devastated a significant portion of the Canadian city. Amid this turmoil was a British sailor named Charles Mayhew who stood on the waterfront when the explosion occurred. The shockwave propelled him through the air like a human cannonball, sending him soaring an estimated 2 kilometers, which is over a mile, through the sky. The force of the blast stripped away every single piece of clothing from his body. Ultimately, he landed completely unclothed and dazed, yet very much alive in a field on the opposite side of the harbor, with only minor injuries. Can you imagine trying to recount that series of events? You didn't just survive an apocalypse. You were involuntarily launched on a terrifying and brief flight to evade it. 15. World War I pilot E.S. Lawrence earned his nickname Lucky in the most astonishing manner imaginable. During a dogfight, his aircraft collided with a German plane, a scenario that usually leads to a fiery fate. Lawrence was violently ejected from his cockpit and began hurtling toward the ground. However, this is where reality morphed into cartoonish physics. Instead of meeting a deadly end, he landed squarely on the tail wing of the very German aircraft he had just collided with. The German pilot, equally astonished, yet still struggling to maintain control of his spiraling plane, managed to execute a crash landing. Both individuals survived, and Lawrence was quickly taken captive as a prisoner of war. This was not merely survival. It was survival infused with an unparalleled level of acrobatic flair. 16. While soldiers during World War II wielded machine guns, grenades, and tanks, British officer John Churchill, better known as Mad Jack, considered that all a bit mundane. His chosen weapons included a Scottish broadsword, a longbow, and bagpipes. This was no mere jest. He is credited with the last documented longbow kill in wartime, taking down a German NCO in 1940. On one occasion, he captured 42 German soldiers and a mortar crew armed only with his sword. He would signal a charge by playing his bagpipes, a sound both fearsome and disorienting on the modern battlefield. His personal motto was, "Any officer who enters battle without his sword is improperly attired." The fact that this individual endured the entirety of the war serves as a powerful reminder that sometimes being wildly unpredictable and completely eccentric is the most effective form of protection. 5. When you leap from an aircraft, your thoughts dart to concerns about your parachute failing or a rough landing. You don't ponder the possibility of being struck by a cosmic marksman. For Norwegian skydiver Anders Helstrup, that frightening scenario almost became a reality. During a descent, a dark, rocky object zipped past his head at a shocking speed. He felt nothing. However, his helmet-mounted cameras captured the entire incident. It was indeed a meteorite, specifically in its dark flight phase after extinguishing its fiery trail. He managed to record the very first footage of a meteorite streaking across the sky from the skydiver's vantage point. The likelihood of this occurrence is so astronomically rare that it's virtually unmeasurable. It's one matter to experience good fortune. It's an entirely different story to narrowly evade a projectile that was launched from the asteroid belt millions of years ago. The cosmos aimed to take him out but missed by mere inches. 5. Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States, was so renowned for his toughness that he earned the nickname Old Hickory. In 1835, that reputation faced its ultimate challenge during the first recorded attempt on a president's life. A disgruntled house painter named Richard Lawrence approached Jackson and fired a pistol at him from close range. Click! Misfire? As Lawrence presented his second pistol, Jackson, the absolute daredevil he was at 67, didn't flee or seek shelter. He charged forward, raising his cane to confront the would-be assassin. Lawrence pulled the trigger on the second pistol. Click! Another misfire. The chances of two separate correctly loaded firearms misfiring in the humid conditions of that day were later estimated to be 1 in 125,000. It seems even gunpowder was too intimidated to function correctly in the presence of Andrew Jackson. 5. If surviving were an official sport, King Zog I of Albania would be crowned the undisputed champion. This man wasn't merely fortunate, he crafted a career out of evading death. Throughout his reign, he allegedly survived more than 55 assassination attempts. That is not a typographical error. 5. These weren't distant conspiracies. In 1931, while departing the Vienna State Opera, assassins ambushed his vehicle. Zog didn't merely duck for cover, he pulled out his own firearm and fought back, helping his bodyguards fend off their attackers. A notorious chain smoker, he was said to consume around 200 cigarettes daily. Yet the greatest threat to his health came from those trying to end his life. For King Zog, assassination attempts were less a dire threat and more an irritating interruption to his daily routine. 5. Surviving more than 55 assassination attempts is remarkable, but Fidel Castro looked at that figure and declared, "Hold my rum." According to his head of security, the Cuban leader weathered over 600 plots and schemes against his life, mainly orchestrated by the CIA. And these were no simple attacks. They resembled a cartoonish array of failures. They attempted everything: an explosive cigar, a fountain pen that concealed a hypodermic needle, a wetsuit laden with a flesh-eating fungus, and even a bomb disguised as a conch shell intended for his favorite diving location. They even dispatched a former lover to administer poison. However, she allegedly concealed the poison pills in a jar of cold cream where they melted away. It seems that Castro's greatest ally wasn't his guards, but rather the almost absurd incompetence of his adversaries. 5. Jean Bedel Bokassa, who declared himself Emperor of the Central African Republic, was a notoriously ruthless and eccentric dictator. But even tyrants are sometimes favored by luck. During a public event, an assassin managed to approach close enough to hurl a grenade straight at him. The deadly projectile was hurtling through the air, about to reduce the emperor to vapor, when fate stepped in through the most ordinary of means. A nearby waiter instinctively raised the metal serving tray he was carrying for protection. The grenade ricocheted off the tray, veered in an entirely different direction, and detonated far from its intended target, thus saving Bokassa's life. His continued rule wasn't safeguarded by an elite bodyguard, but rather by a piece of dinnerware. That waiter surely earned a promotion. 5. In 1972, King Hassan II of Morocco was en route home on his personal Boeing 727 when his own air force attempted to shoot him down during a military coup. Rebel fighter jets peppered the aircraft with bullets, incapacitating one engine and putting the plane's integrity at serious risk. As the royal aircraft started to plunge, the king understood that sheer force could not rescue him, but an audacious bluff might do the trick. Seizing the radio, he coolly declared in a crew member's tone, "The tyrant has been slain. The tyrant is no more. Long live our homeland." Convincing themselves their mission was accomplished, the rebel pilots ceased firing. They even honored the deceased king's aircraft by dipping their wings in salute and escorted the damaged plane to a safe landing. He did not merely survive, he outsmarted his would-be assassins, turning them into his unexpected honor guard. Indeed, being involved in politics can be perilous. However, for Spanish Prime Minister Adolfo Suárez, the gravest danger stemmed from a hunting excursion with a companion. While they were out hunting, his friend swung the shotgun around to follow a bird, inadvertently aiming it directly at Suárez's head. The man pulled the trigger. At that precise moment, a single unfortunate pigeon flew right between them. The bird absorbed the full impact of the shotgun blast, instantly bursting in a cloud of feathers and sparing the Prime Minister's life. It was the quintessential case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time for the pigeon and the absolute stroke of luck for Suárez. A feathered bodyguard he never realized he had came to his rescue. A genuine Secret Service agent who made the ultimate sacrifice entirely by chance. Wenceslaus, the first Duke of Bohemia during the 10th century, was recognized as a devout and benevolent leader. In fact, he was so virtuous that his ambitious younger brother, Bolus the Cruel, plotted to have him murdered. A band of assassins lay in wait for Wenceslaus outside a church, prepared to ambush him on his way to morning prayers. Their plan seemed flawless. Yet on that fateful morning, the Duke, a man of habit and devotion, acted quite out of character. He overslept. After waiting for a time without seeing their target, the assassins grew restless, assumed he wouldn't appear, and simply left the scene. Wenceslaus's life was spared not by vigilant guards or a prophetic vision, but through a mere lazy snooze. Sometimes the snooze button serves as the most formidable defense system available. Envision standing before a firing squad. Your sentence has been pronounced. Your destiny seems sealed. This was the grim reality faced by British soldier John Starks, condemned to death for desertion during the Napoleonic Wars. As the firing squad soldiers lifted their rifles and took aim, a friend present to observe the execution stepped forward for a final farewell handshake. With mere moments to live, Starks grasped his friend's hand. It was an extended, somber goodbye. While they held their handshake, a rider was seen galloping toward them in the distance, waving a piece of paper. It was a last-minute pardon from the Duke of York. Had their handshake been even a few moments shorter, the order to fire would have been given. Starks was delivered from a barrage of bullets by the simple, lingering act of proper farewell. The saga of Walter Summerford is so peculiar it sounds like a fanciful story, but it serves as a chilling reminder that lightning seemingly can hold a vendetta. In 1918, while serving as a British officer during World War I, Major Summerford was struck by lightning while riding on horseback, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. He recuperated only to be struck again in 1924 while fishing beneath a tree in Canada, which paralyzed the right side of his body. He recovered once more in 1930. Unfortunately, he encountered a third strike while strolling through a park, resulting in permanent paralysis. He passed away 2 years later, but the lightning was not yet done with him. 4 years after his death in 1936, a lightning bolt struck the cemetery and obliterated his tombstone. The universe didn't just wish him gone. It sought to erase every trace of his existence from the annals of time. The tale of James Bartley stands as one of the most renowned and controversial maritime stories. In 1891, during a whaling expedition near the Fallen Islands, Bartley's vessel was destroyed by a colossal sperm whale. He was thrown overboard and disappeared, presumed drowned. The following day, the same whale was captured and killed. As the crew began to butcher it on the deck, they noticed movement within the whale's stomach. They cut it open and, to their utter amazement, found James Bartley unconscious yet alive. He had spent more than 5 hours in the heart of the monster. His skin had turned pale from the acidic gastric juices, and he experienced temporary blindness, yet he managed to survive. While some historians dispute the validity of the narrative for many years, it has been regarded as the quintessential sailor's tale, a story of being engulfed by a beast and surviving to recount the experience. 5. J.P. Morgan was not merely an industrial giant. He was the proprietor of the White Star Line, the very company responsible for constructing the Titanic. As the owner, he was of course slated to be present at the ship's illustrious maiden voyage, occupying one of its most opulent suites. His luggage was packed and he was all set. Yet just moments before the ship was scheduled to depart from Southampton, he made a last-minute decision to cancel his journey. The official explanation provided was a sudden illness, although some speculate that he was merely occupied with business affairs or perhaps a romantic entanglement. Regardless of the reason, his impulse decision spared him from perishing alongside his own unsinkable creation. This serves as the ultimate illustration of a leader wisely opting to miss the inaugural day at a new and significantly flawed workplace. 5. The peculiar tale of Hugh Williams is not so much about a fortunate individual, but more about a name that seems to serve as a cosmic lifeline. In the year 1664, a ship sank in the Menai Strait off the coast of Wales. The sole survivor was a man named Hugh Williams. In the year 1785, yet another ship sank in precisely the same location. Once more, there was a single survivor, and he too was named Hugh Williams. Then, in the year 1820, a third vessel capsized in those perilous waters. Yet again, all perished except for one man, Hugh Williams. The likelihood of this triple occurrence is so astronomically improbable that it defies logical explanation. It seems as though the sea gods governing that particular strait had a strict directive: we will claim the ship, but Hugh Williams shall remain unharmed. 5. In the treacherous and backstabbing domain of Roman imperial politics, being perceived as a fool equated to a death sentence, unless you were Claudius. Afflicted with a limp, a stutter, and various nervous habits, he was viewed by his family, including the deranged Emperor Caligula, as a harmless and embarrassing simpleton. While other imperial family members were systematically poisoned, exiled, or executed amidst power struggles, Claudius remained completely overlooked. He was the family's punchline, not a danger. Then in the year 41 AD, Caligula was killed. The Praetorian Guard, in a frenzy to select a new emperor, burst into the palace and discovered Claudius cowering behind a curtain, shaking with fear. They spared his life. Instead, they proclaimed him emperor on the spot. His entire existence of being underestimated became his greatest strength, allowing him to ascend to the highest position of power in the world. 5. Surviving a single gunshot is a stroke of luck. But Wenceslao Miguel's tale is in a category of its own. During the Mexican Revolution in the year 1915, he was captured and sentenced to death by firing squad without a trial. He was lined up against a wall, and a team of shooters fired at him 9 times, riddling his body with bullets. To ensure the deed was completed, an officer then approached and delivered a finishing shot, a final bullet to the head at close range. In an astonishing turn of events, none of the bullets damaged his vital organs, and the headshot miraculously passed through his cheek and exited the other side without affecting his brain. He feigned death until his executioners departed, then crawled away to safety. He lived a long life, even making an appearance on Ripley's Believe It or Not, forever remembered as El Fusilado, the one who was executed. 5. In the 11th century, long before the Wright brothers, an English monk named Elmer of Malmesbury believed he had discovered the secret to flying. He fashioned a pair of rudimentary wings, scaled the top of Malmesbury Abbey, and with more faith than knowledge of aerodynamics leaped into the void. Surprisingly, it worked to some extent. He glided for over 200 meters a distance, exceeding 2 football fields before a gust of wind caused him to lose control and crash. He survived the impact but broke both legs and was left with a lasting limp. He later regretted that his only error was neglecting to attach a tail. This man did not merely endure a reckless experiment, he became one of history's earliest and most remarkable aviation pioneers, all while donning monk's robes. 5. Anders Hellstrip, the Norwegian skydiver, nearly encountered a meteorite during its dark descent. But what if one of those celestial stones truly finds a link? Back in the 11th century, well before the advent of contemporary aviation, there was an English monk named Elmer from Malmesbury who believed he had unlocked the secret to human flight. He fashioned a set of rudimentary wings and affixed them to his arms and torso, then ascended the heights of Malmesbury Abbey, launching himself into the void. Remarkably, his invention worked for a brief moment. He soared through the air for an astonishing distance exceeding 200 meters. That equates to more than 2 football fields before he lost his balance and fell to the earth. Fortunately, he survived the fall but suffered breaks in both legs, resulting in a lifelong limp. He later claimed that his singular error was not constructing a tail to ensure stability. This man wasn't merely fortunate to live, he was an unintentional aviation pioneer centuries ahead of his era. We have presented 33 tales of luck, so outrageous that they seem like a glitch in the fabric of reality. Yet history is an infinite source of madness, and we are aware that we have only skimmed the surface. So here's the challenge. What is the one tale of incredible fortune that we utterly ignored? Don't simply provide a name. We seek the story that renders our list pale in comparison. Share it in the comments. And if you wish to find out which of your suggestions will make it into a future video, tap that like button, spread the intrigue with a fellow history enthusiast, and subscribe with notifications activated so that you never miss the next adventure. Thank you for watching. We look forward to seeing you next time.